Welcome to this week's edition of Two Men in the Middle, where two men in the middle of the country pontificate about politics, global affairs, and current events. I'm Brandon Koenig.
I'm Craig Huey.
Craig, we are on week two post-debate, defining moment in our campaign cycle that seemed to change everything as we understood it. And still, we are still nowhere nearer to seeing a resolution in terms of having the president step aside, allow somebody else to run. And it's enraging, infuriating, and it boggles the mind. It took him a week to do an interview, and he sat down for George Stephanopoulos for 15 minutes, and it was not a good interview by any stretch of the imagination. He did not perform well, clearly just reemphasize the issues that people have with him in terms of mumbling, incoherency, not being able to frame an argument. You even had George Stephanopoulos come out after the interview. He was, I think,
he was on the street.
TMZ, it was with TMZ, and he
came out and said, "Oops, should have done that."
Well, that and George said, he doesn't think he'll be able to serve another term at all. I mean, everybody knows that going in. But yet there's this feeling of stagnation. The party feels stuck. No leaders want to come out and actually say anything.
No.
The closest we got today is actually former Speaker Pelosi coming out and saying that Biden needs to make a decision quickly.
She kind of half-assed it.
She
said
did.
He needs it. I have not heard a senior-level person come out and say, "What are we doing? He's obviously done. Let's move on."
That should be somebody who's elected, though, right now.
It has to be.
There have been a trickle of House Democrats and a couple senators, like Senator Mike Bennett of Colorado, who have basically said Biden can't win.
Yeah.
Several House Democrats who have called for him to stand aside. A couple of governors, like Governor Healy of Massachusetts, but no leadership, right? Leadership is, and in fact, you can see it because the statements that the leaders are giving are very milquetoast. They're like, Biden is our nominee.
Yeah.
We stand by, but they're not just enthusing in their praise and their confidence. I mean, it's very clear that they're saying the bare minimum and they're afraid to go against the Biden campaign. And it's like, how are we still in the same place after all this?
Well, when Biden had to have, so we would agree that after that debate, the Stephanopoulos interview had to be hit it out of the park in order to kind of correct the momentum of Biden's campaign. So in a situation where he had to have it, nothing's more important than that interview with George Stephanopoulos. He went a grand total of 22 minutes. So now we know what Biden's outer limit is. When it's the most important interview of your life, you can do 22 minutes on camera.
Yeah.
And in that 22 minutes, he just came off as an old ranting man. He came off as defiant. He came off as if, and he actually said that he didn't watch himself in that debate.
That was surprising.
He came off as somebody completely divorced from reality, not understanding the situation he's in, and also, too, just showing no leadership at all.
He was completely wrong about the New York Times poll he cited. He claimed that he gained ground after the debate. He actually lost ground in the New York Times poll. He was meandering. He jumped from thought to thought. Did it finish some of the thoughts? He didn't make a case for his campaign. People brought up again before a live audience of 50 million people, and then with the Stephanopoulos debate, he never brought up Project 2025.
Nope.
He's not able to make the case against Trump because
he can't prosecute Trump.
No,
he can't
he can't stay on message long
No.
enough. He's not.
No.
And this is what's most infuriating for me. If this is really an existential threat against democracy, like I think it is, and like many people think it is, when he was asked by George, what would you say to those, if you lose, how are you going to feel about that? And the danger Trump poses, he said, well, I'll know that I did the goodest job. He said goodest that I could do, and I gave it my all. I'm like, no,
Hey,
that is not.
This isn't an 8th grade spelling bee. There's a little bit more on the line than I just want to feel good about the race that I ran, and
Right.
that'll be enough.
This isn't about Biden and his ego. With democracy on the line, your campaign can't say that it's an existential threat, and you can't then shrug it off and say, well, I'll have done my best job. That's all I can ask for.
So, Brandon, I went back and listened to some of our old podcasts, and I would say it's fair to say that you and I are both, I wouldn't describe us as fans of the Biden presidency. It's been okay, but all in all, there's a lot to be critical of with Biden. I think that's kind of fair.
I think that's fair. I think he has accomplished a great deal legislatively in spite of the polarization and the divided government we have. I think if you look at the infrastructure bill, if you look at the alliances he's been able to build within NATO, and when I say he, I mean the administration at large, having the right people in the right places.
Let's not do that.
Okay.
The presidency is about one man and one man only. It is not a team. We're not electing a group of people. It is him. I am so tired of Democrats trying to tell me it's okay because he has a team around him. When you elect a president, you're really no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not voting for I'm voting for him. And I think one of the things a disservice the Democrats are doing right now is it's okay because he'll put a team. No, that's not how any of this works.
Well, no, I agree. But I think the positives that you can cite from his presidency have likely been in spite of him, not because of him. I'm saying that's
fair game.
I think that there's probably a lack of leadership there, and a lot of his administration and his cabinet has had to kind of work independently. And so, but I don't think that bodes well for the future. You don't want a future where that's the case. No. And I think you've seen that already. You had, over the course of last week, several leaders of our allied countries within NATO and within the EU come forward and say that they are scared as hell about the future because they don't think Biden has it in him. They feel like the Democrats need to step up and do something and replace him. And so if you look at it from that vantage point, there's all of these anecdotal stories of people within the administration, people from without, diplomatically, who have worked with Biden, who are all on the same refrain that he is not the same man who he was, that he has declined mentally, deteriorated cognitively, and he is slower and he is not up to the challenge. And I don't know how you can write that off. And then what really pisses me off as well, as someone who's obviously new to the pro-democracy coalition and former Republican, is Democrats who want to basically close ranks around the president, telling people to just shut the hell up, essentially, and get in line. Like, no, like that is not the way you build a coalition. Democrats need to realize that this coalition, if it's going to be successful, it contains everybody from the far left, Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, all the way up to like Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney. That's the coalition, anti-Trump coalition.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be. So you cannot tell people to shut up and get in line when they have serious concerns, doubts, and that are reflected based on what they saw on national television. This is not we believe what we saw with our own eyes. So it's disingenuous and it's demeaning to tell us that not, and to ignore that, or to write this off as he was having an off day, or this was a one-time event. That's not the case.
Maybe that's a good way to structure this conversation. You talked about what you're most mad about. What I'm most mad about is even when Joe Biden was in the primary and it became obvious that he was going to be our nominee, and then when it became obvious he had a real chance to become the president, the most obvious thing to do, because the man was 80 goddamn years old when he got elected or close to it, was what is the plan if he cannot run?
Yeah.
What is the plan if halfway through this things go toes up and we have to swap this out, which is the most probable outcome.
And nobody spent time on this?
Due to his age.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody spent time on this. How in the world did nobody...
when the most probable thing happens, he has a medical episode in public that make people doubt his candidacy, you are totally caught with your pants down. There is no plan. That is absolutely malpractice. And what pisses me off the most is we're the Dems. We're supposed to be the professional manager class. We bring professionalism to the government.
Plan for contingencies,
there is no
crises.
Business that doesn't plan for these things.
Right.
And we just, I got nothing. I never thought that this would be the way this goes down. I think for the past 6 months, I've been much more negative on Biden than you've been.
I agree, yeah.
Because I was 1,000% convinced he's not going to run for reelection. And I believe my evidence for that was, well, he can't talk and he looks like he's dead. So what you tell me, what avenue does he have to campaign on? As soon as that became obvious from the debate, to your point, the Democrats pivoted to what the Republicans have done for the past 8 years. Shut up, get in line. This is our best chance to win. let's just go along with it.
But see, and that's what frustrates me, because those who didn't, those who spoke up, were then basically shouted down and told to get in line, as if, we're going to trade one cult of personality for another. Like, this is not about any one candidate. And I don't know how we're in the situation now where there's this supreme allegiance to a singular candidate. Like, that should not be
that is not
the focus.
what we're about.
This isn't about loyalty. This is politics.
I mean, you said it, and I just keep saying this over and over to myself again. My party is asking me not to believe what I saw with my own eyes. They just keep coming back to, you didn't see what you saw. This isn't as bad as you think it is, while offering really no explanation for what I saw or no definition of why it happened or how bad it is.
Well, constantly changing excuses. I mean, how many different excuses? Oh, he didn't get any rest. Oh, he was ill. I mean, they constantly change the story, they're...
Being president is pretty taxing. I don't think I could keep a president's schedule and not have some sort of mental breakdown,
right,
or something like that. And Biden's 80, it's just...
But the thing, too, is they keep trying to spin this as a one-off event where we know it wasn't. We talked offline about this, but on July 4th, Biden did a little bit of an address from the White House South Portico with an audience where he talked about the 4th of July. And even in that address, he was rambling. He said, ho, 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 like Merry Christmas. He started mumbling. He started kind of going off of the main event area, and he had to be brought back. He didn't know what he was doing. It was very embarrassing. Regular CNN didn't carry it, but CNN International carried it live, and you could see it was like a host with an Australian accent, but like didn't know what was going on and didn't know how to interpret. Like, this is the norm. Like, this is why, and I think you've alluded to this, Craig, this is why he's done so few press conferences. They have kept him shut off from media and from appearances. He did not do the Super Bowl interview, which was a big opportunity.
Massive red flag.
Super big red flag. And they have intentionally not put him out there. And there was also that leak, again, this was in the last 2 weeks, from somebody in the White House saying that he's most functional between like 11 and 4 p.m. And then his functionality just goes downhill after that.
Me and the president keep the same schedule. After 8, I'm done.
But the difference is you're not running for president.
True. I'm not running the free world.
And so talk about alarm bells. Do you know what that says to our enemies? Like, oh, the president isn't all with it after 4 p.m. So maybe if we want to cause something, maybe we just wait until after 4 p.m.
So I took a walk last night, and I started texting folks on our politics chain as I started thinking. And Brandon, let's play a game now. Let's play a game where we link Trump and Biden together, where now they're exactly the same candidate. I'll give you one. Both of them, as president, waste their words. Trump wastes his words on bullshit,
yes,
and pettiness, and God knows what. And Biden can't make words.
Right.
What is the most important tool in a president's toolbox?
Communication.
Words.
Yes.
The whole goddamn job is really, it's supposed to be an administrative job and a words job.
You have to be able to sell your
policies.
policies.
2 presidents now who don't know how to use their words as president. That's a problem. And in that area, Trump and Biden very much mimic each other.
I'd also add another one is denialism, denying reality. Biden denies all of the polls.
We don't believe in polling.
We don't
now.
believe in
we
it.
Don't believe in that.
Yeah. Denying elections. Like, that's where they're now the same.
Here's another one. Going against the overall will of your party.
Railing against party elites.
They've both captured, both political parties now are being held hostages by old dudes, unpopular old dudes. And there's not a whole heck of a lot we seem to be able to do about it. But we also have to kind of come out and finally admit, all of us as Democrats, liberal, however you want to label yourself, if you're not a Republican and you're not a conservative, we all saw this coming. We all lied to ourselves because to say something against Biden was perceived as to say something supporting Trump. And that's why the media shoved all of this under the rug, didn't bring – let's put it this way. The media showed a stunning lack of uncuriosity about what Biden's medical condition was and how that's impacting his presidency. And that's what we're dealing with now. But they didn't do that because in no way in this environment, they didn't want to be labeled as helping Trump. That's a problem. That's a problem. If we're all going to stop functioning around Biden and not saying the truth around Biden because we're afraid of Trump, then we are no different than the Republicans.
And I think that's completely true. You have to be willing to speak hard truths, whether it's the other side or your own side. And I'll admit that I thought that most of what we heard about Biden being too old or, having stumbles was exaggeration by far-right media, just because I thought that was the strategy.
I believed a lot of the cheap fakes, they called them, like when Biden was supposedly talking to the extra parachute guy. Okay, maybe, but I also know for a fact the Prime Minister of Italy had to go over there and drag him back because he wasn't where he was supposed to be. I know when he did a fundraiser with Clinton and Obama after I think he had just gotten back from the G7 or something, he froze again on stage and Obama had to lead him off. I mean, these are all things right in front of our face that we just glossed over because we knew it would help Trump.
How much of the presidency is about aesthetics and about visuals? Remember the debate? Trump was able to walk off stage by himself. Was Biden able to walk off stage? No. He had Jill Biden come and actually walk him off stage. He could not walk off stage by himself. Like, he had to have help to walk off. Like, that's not normal.
I keep replaying this fantasy in my head, and it's me just torturing myself and just masturbating intellectually thinking about things. But November of 2022, if Biden would have resigned after the red wave didn't come about, nobody would know who James Comer is. Because why go through all of that bullshit in 22 when he's not running anymore? He could have saved his family all types of discomfort by just simply backing away from it, by just fulfilling the promise that he made that I'm a one guy gap to somebody else, and that's all I want to be. I just don't. What we're learning about Biden is, number one, he's not a leader, because a leader would recognize where he's at and would take the corrective actions to put the party and the people he cares about in the best possible spot.
He's stubborn
to
and
succeed.
Egotistical. And the call-in to Joe Scarborough, I mean,
awful.
That was awful. He was defiant. He was smug.
Just brutal. Yeah. That he's down in the polls. He was down in the polls before the debate. He's down in the polls more. If something doesn't change, he will absolutely lose the election.
And I just want to go back to the fact that he thinks that the red wave that never materialized in 2022, that somehow is because of him. Like, he took the wrong message away from that. That it was the opposite. Like, it was in spite of his unpopularity, because Democrats had good candidates and Republicans nominated crazy MAGA candidates.
That's what I'm saying, though. He could have ridden out on that. I did this, and everybody would have clapped and said,
he takes credit.
It doesn't matter. We would have given him the credit to get him out.
I see what you're saying.
And now we're just going to have to destroy him. We're going to have to murder this old man.
Because the alternative.
Because that's it.
Losing to Trump, if Biden loses to Trump, that's it. His legacy is forever tarnished by the fact that he was stubborn, refused to get out of the race, and he imperiled democracy. Everything else goes by the wayside in terms of what he's been able to accomplish. It's just that.
Biden won't lose. He'll get trampled on. What Trump sees in his sights right now is a complete MAGA victory. You guys fucked this up so much. It didn't matter that no suburban women would vote for me. It doesn't matter that I repulse college-educated people. I took my own little MAGA base, and because you guys are so incompetent, I won just with that.
That's why Trump is
now,
quiet.
You will sit down and you will enjoy the next 4 years, because here it comes.
Yep.
And if nothing changes, he's going to walk to that victory in November.
There's a reason that Trump's campaign is not spending money right now, that they are not out there full blast, because they don't have to be, because this is what they want. They want Biden to stay. That is their best shot. And so they are tight-lipped. They don't want things to change.
Now, I disagree with that. And I think what they really want is Kamala Harris. And I know you and I have a disagreement with what we think Kamala Harris is. I think the best thing, what sums up my position about Kamala Harris succinctly is the best day of her campaign will be the first day. As soon as she opens her mouth, what will happen is what always happens. If you can show me a string of presentations, speeches that she gave, that she doesn't word salad a bunch of stuff, act in a way that is off-putting to, I think, the majority of people. This is the 6th time the Dems have shoved Kamala Harris in our face and told us, well, this is a female Barack Obama. No, it's not. She has no political talent. She will get trounced.
Well, first and foremost, this goes back to the Biden campaign because they chose her to be part of the ticket. So we can go all the way back.
That's right.
That was
after she
mistake
called Joe
number one.
Biden a racist on the stage.
Right. And Joe Biden had plenty of qualified people to choose from, and he chose her. So, again,
Yep.
the mistakes go far back. But I will say she put in a fantastic debate performance against Mike Pence and was considered the winner of that debate. And prior to that, she was able to effectively interrogate Bill Barr when she was in the Senate. And, that was recognized by a lot of people as pretty hard-hitting.
Do you remember when we first became aware of Kamala Harris during the Brett Kavanaugh interview? Remember the shit she pulled there? When she asked these very specific questions about, did you talk to this person? These particular people.
I forgot
intimating
about that
something was coming, and then, no.
Nothing, yeah.
No. That's Kamala Harris in a nutshell. In a controlled setting, she can deliver a few lines, but they never end up being anything.
But I think the difference now is if she's running for president, she's going to have a whole lot of handlers, aides, people around her, consultants, coaches. She would be more amenable to that feedback, I would think, than somebody like Biden who just can't. I mean, because of his mental and cognitive state.
What are Kamala Harris's core issues she's going to run on? What does a typical Kamala Harris stump speech for president look like?
That's a good question. We don't know.
I can't even come up with it. We're going to hit abortion a lot. I guess we're going to talk about Venn diagrams, buses, shit like that, which he always seems to wonder.
And I completely agree.
She's going to cackle a few times and wave her hands around weirdly. She's just an off-putting person.
It is difficult, and she is awkward, and a lot of this is self-inflicted. But I will also point the finger back at the Biden administration because they have not done her any favors. I don't know how you pick somebody as VP and then keep them shut out. Because, again, if you're thinking about succession...
If they have no talent, how do you bring them in?
But why would you have chosen her in the first place then if she has no
Brandon,
talent?
are you going to make me say it? Are you going to make me say it? She was a black female. That's why she got charged.
But I'm saying they had 4 years to try to coach her and do something, and they haven't.
Or she couldn't.
Maybe it's both. The fact that they had no succession plan for what would happen if Biden croaked doesn't give me a lot of confidence that they tried to do anything really with Harris. Yeah, I get the feeling that my opinion of the political operation behind Biden has really gone downhill based on everything we know now. Yeah. I really wonder what...
Everything's on the table. Everything could be true at this point.
I mean, they're inept. I mean, that's the only way to describe it is completely inept.
This is why I'm so angry about Kamala Harris and her potential of taking over the ticket. For the second time, the Democrats are asking me to do the exact same thing they asked me to do with Biden in that debate. Take everything you've seen about Kamala Harris, ignore all of the facts and evidence about her, and just believe. Just believe. She can do it. Why? Why can she do it? Show me where she can do it. Show me one time she did do it. I can't find...
Was she only in the Senate one term? She was a...
Yeah, she's
no
a one-term
re-election.
senator.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a one-term senator. Yeah. I mean, she was the AG and a senator. I get that. All I'm saying is Kamala Harris is widely perceived as someone with very limited political talent.
I don't disagree. I just think, and again, we may be talking on the margins here, there's room for her to move on the margins at least somewhat, whereas there is none for Biden. I'm looking at best case forward, having a fighting chance versus having no chance. And so that's a situation.
With all of that said, I do agree with you. She does give us a better chance than Joe Biden because she can answer the question, yeah, I can serve as president for another 4 years. I physically can do that.
Because
he can't.
That has to be the most likely path forward. And I mean, there has been some talk about having some kind of like mini convention where you basically have candidates that are grilled like in some kind of public setting by Barack Obama or somebody else, and then you kind of whittle down to one.
So we get like the past popular Democrats, Clinton
and Obama. Yeah.
Good God.
I think it was Clyburn or somebody put that forward as a...
I've heard him mention like a mini primary.
That's what it was. Like
I don't know. I can't even come up with what would that mean.
We've talked about
it's the only path forward.
Because there are people. I love Gretchen Whitmer. I really like Pete Buttigieg a lot because he is super talented communicator. But I mean, there's plenty of other people outside of that. You have governors galore that are great. Like if we had the whole universe, but again, we've had 4 years where there's been like no attempt to look at the bench and
And I don't think we have the universe either. I mean, what is the date that Biden, if this goes past, I've heard like August 17th or August 21st or something, his name's on the ballot.
Right. Well, and then another wrinkle in all this is there is a virtual nominating convention, or even earlier than the regular convention, specifically to address the issue in Ohio to make sure he gets on the ballot because and I want to know which Democratic attorneys screwed that up, like not paying attention.
I haven't paid attention to this, but it seems like there was like just a snafu, and suddenly this opened the door for Republicans to say Biden.
That's what happened. Like they did a file to get him on the ballot ahead of time, and then they've had to argue with the legislature and the Secretary of State, which didn't want to do him any favors, and then the governor stepped in, and they worked out this solution with the virtual convention. Now, this has happened in the past with both parties, and it usually hasn't been an issue, but the Democrats should have had the foresight to know in today's environment with the MAGA people that run a lot of these red states, it was going to be very different. They weren't going to be accommodating. They would have no problem like having Trump not challenged on the ballot. So that's partially why Democrats have to contend with this virtual convention, which is coming up in July, much sooner.
Ohio's a lost cause for Biden. He's never winning Ohio.
But he has to be on the ballot.
Sure.
I mean, do you know how awful that would look like if you have a huge state like Ohio where you basically don't have a Democrat on the ballot for president?
But this whole idea of a mini convention or a convention fight is pure fantasy. It's silly. Kamala Harris is sitting on $300 million. That money goes to no one else. When people donated, they donated to the Biden-Harris ticket. So she starts off with a massive war chest that nobody else would have. Second, Gretchen Whitmer's name ID to you and I is high. Half the country doesn't know who these people are.
I agree, but I see. I'm less worried about that than you are because, again, less name ID, but they don't have the high negatives in either. It gives them much more time to build out the positives. Trump has the high negatives, so I think, head to head, they would start with an advantage that he doesn't have.
I agree. I think there's something to that of just being a non-incumbent.
Somebody like a Whitmer, you would know that she would win Michigan, which is a must-win.
Sure,
for the Democrats. And I mean, so there's nuances like that have to come into play too.
No potential replacement candidate by polling beats Trump. None. There's some that are farther. There's some that are closer. Last poll I said Harris was down 6 to him or 5 or something like that.
There was one where she was only down by like 2 points.
But this is the other thing as Democrats. I guess we're just not grasping this, and I don't know how to make us grasp this. Biden is losing in every single swing state poll.
Yeah.
And after this debate, he was losing before the debate. He's losing by even more after it.
Well,
I think what's confusing us, Brandon, is the bottom didn't fall out. I think we were all waiting for some collapse, and when it didn't happen, we just said, well, I guess we'll just stumble forward.
But see, and that's also, I think, a failure by experts to chime in because we're not going to see the bottom fall out in a polarized electorate. There's always going to be a floor that Biden is going to maintain, around 45 to 47% of the vote. And so same goes for Trump because we're just in such polarized times where you're going to have a segment of the population that would vote against, a dead dog against Trump. But people need to look at on the margins and look at the swing state polls because that's where you've seen the most volatility, as you've said. I thought it was very disingenuous because the Biden campaign pointed to these morning consult polls that came out after the debate that showed him up in a handful of swing states. But that same poll showed him over 55% of Democrats wanted him to step down, and it showed him losing Pennsylvania by 7. So why would you not? Why would you use that?
How fucking insulting is that? You show me that debate performance, then 2 days later you're trying to convince me your polls went up? That's a number point of done.
Well, and you're cherry picking from a poll too, and ignoring the very bad,
correct,
information in that poll.
You saw that debate, and you're going to make a case. I didn't drop it. My polls went up. You couldn't convince a 10-year-old of that. No. Just absolutely ridiculous. Is there any recovery here? Is there any path? Let's talk Biden specifically first. There's no way Biden he might hold on simply because he refused to leave, but he can't gain in the polls or put this back or mount any type of serious campaign.
No, not at all. The only thing that I would think that could force him out is the money drying up. And if you have enough big-time donors, so there was a major high donor fundraiser scheduled in Chicago in early August, and all of the donors have withdrawn, and so that fundraiser is canceled.
I'm assuming Obama helped put that together because it was in Chicago.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And you have George Clooney, who very big Democratic donor, well-known Hollywood celebrity, penned an op-ed basically saying Biden needs to withdraw. You have Michael Douglas saying the same thing. You have the heiress to the Disney fortune, Abigail Disney, said that as well. The former CEO of Netflix, big Democratic donor, said the same thing. You have, this is, insane. If you think about it, any other context, you have this many big Democratic donors saying their nominee needs to step down. That should be a resounding message.
Clooney's best friend is Obama. Clooney coming out and saying that is basically a proxy for Obama saying that. Obama wants to say that, but he knows it's not quite the time.
Yeah.
Time frame on Joe Biden moving forward. I don't. He's planning more interviews.
See, I think
no
part
indication.
of the problem is I think he's not operating in reality right now, and those that are around him are not. And that's what really scares me is that they're oblivious. They don't, and I think under normal circumstances, he should have been out already. He should be out within the week. I think their strategy is trying to draw this out and run out the clock to the convention so they don't have to do it. And so I think the only thing to change that is if you have Democratic leadership in both houses come out and say he needs to go. If you have coordination among all of the biggest Democratic donors to just have that fundraising dry up immediately. Because if that spigot turns off, essentially, the campaign won't be able to continue operating now. They'd have to start making drastic cuts, and that really kind of shuts down the campaign. You have to have something of that nature, I think. I don't know. Seeing Biden call into Joe Scarborough, he was completely out of it, and he was that's the ramblings of a guy who's not in touch with reality.
Let's talk about the media for a minute, mostly cable media and CNN and MSNBC. They have handled this terribly. Morning Joe is an absolute joke. Mika Brzezinski giving a 10-minute impassioned speech after that debate, how Joe Scarborough he was off base and it's time to rally behind Biden. That's just absolutely awful bullshit and just terrible. And what are all these people going to do in another month when he stays in and he has this a second episode?
Yeah. How are they going to rationalize
what's
that
Mika
away?
going to tell me then? I didn't see that one too, or that one wasn't.
We didn't see that coming.
Bad?
Really?
Oh yeah, we didn't see that coming. Am I supposed to shut up again and just fall in line like I always have and just vote for Democrats?
Yeah.
I think the media recognizes there's some embarrassment for them in this. And I think half the media is trying to get to the path to say, hey, yes, we knew this. We need to move on. Biden's not the guy. While this other sliver is playing this weird, if everybody just shuts up and act like nobody saw anything, Trump is so terrible, Biden can still win this election. When we lose this election, which we will, What costs us this election more than anything is our obsession over Donald Trump. The fact that we can't go 30 seconds without thinking of him, insulting him, calling him Orange Hitler, or just having the thought permeate our brain, I don't have to do anything. He's so terrible. In the end, that's what's going to lose us this. Right. Our inability to move past that turd and let him dictate to us what we're doing is what's going to kill us.
Yeah, he's laughing all the way to the
He dug a pit,
Mar-a-Lago.
and we jumped right in it.
The other thing, too, that I think, based on what you just said, Biden hasn't actually articulated a vision for a second term. Like, what are his policy priorities? What would he do? Like, part of it is prosecuting the case against Trump and why he's so dangerous, but part two is what are you going to do? What is your plans? Like, what do you want to do for the United States? What are your top priorities? We don't know that because he's not able to articulate that.
Can he?
I don't think he can. I think that's part of the problem. And so you're just asked to vote for him to stop Trump, but that's not going to fly with swing voters the states where it matters, and the percentage of the electorate that's right in the middle on the margins. Because again, it's a very broad coalition the Democrats have to hold. Beyond their firebrand base. would vote for anybody against Trump. And so it's almost like so many of them have blinders on, because I see these Democrats on social media that are just like indignant, say, and they start saying, I'm going to unfollow this guy because he criticized Biden's performance. I'm just going to, silo myself off. Like, no, that is the problem.
I took just the opposite to my Twitter feed. I blocked anybody that said I didn't see what I saw. My Twitter feed's gotten a ton better.
Yeah.
Just and to block somebody, you have to follow them, then block them. They've made blocking like extra hard, but it's worth the 2 extra clicks to do it.
But that's what drives. I cannot tell you how many people I saw, Craig, that were blocking, the Pod Save America guys, the Bulwark people, because they dared criticize Biden. They're like, okay, blocking you now. Like, really?
I can't.
Like, how immature is that? Like,
what are those people's plan? What's the plan? Are we just Trump bad, Biden riding, Biden? That's it? That's all we got?
And their claim is completely off base, that by saying that bringing us up now, it only helps Trump. The problem is Trump is going to use this full speed in the campaign. We need to be talking about this now. We need to have a plan, a contingency plan, because guess what? If we don't find a solution now, Trump is going to be 24/7 on Biden's age and senility. So the idea that somehow like talking about it only helps Trump, like, that's ridiculous. That's BS.
Well, we just shut off our most effective line of attack. Democracy's at stake.
Yeah.
Because democracy's at stake with this dude. You're running somebody that cannot complete a term. That is the sheer definition of democracy at stake. What are we doing?
And we didn't even, we haven't even talked about a Parkinson's doctor. Visitor logs show that he visited the White House 8 times.
Because he's 81. Of course he sees a Parkinson's doctor.
But did you see how the White House was like, well, there's a lot of personnel at the White House that, have needs and are seen. And then the White House press secretary wouldn't even comment on whether or not it had to do with Biden. It's so disingenuous.
We chuckled at Christy Nome, who got herself in a spot where she did some things and told some lies, and to get out of the situation she was in, there was one way that just could have cut through it and ended it all: the truth. But that's the one thing she couldn't do.
Why is that so hard now?
I have no clue. She couldn't say I threw the dog story in to be a hard ass and I lied about Kim Jong-un. Sorry, move on. It's over.
She doubled down. And that's doubled down. That's a default now. People just double down. They don't admit fault. When did it become the ultimate political sin to say, my bad, I was wrong, I'm sorry,
And I am very much on this side that Hunter and Jill Biden are the ones keeping him in there. And they're doing it for their own purposes.
And the fact now that he's taking political advice from Hunter and having him in meetings at the White House, like, what?
That's ridiculous.
I mean, is that not what Trump did with Ivanka Jared?
That's what I'm saying. We're getting real close here to Trump Biden in a lot of ways. And I'm not trying to say Biden is as bad as Trump.
Right.
Not unique threat and a unique psychopath that it's not even close. But they're starting to share some basic traits and similarities that are incredibly off-putting to Biden's base.
With both of those individuals, they have internalized this election where it's all about them and how they feel and what they think above everybody else, and they write off political reality and pretend that doesn't exist. So those are commonalities between both candidates.
But I can say this with ever-increasing certainty. How you just described about himself, egotistical, that's a symptom of becoming old. I'm starting to learn that as I get old. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s now. Half of the thing. Think about what you talk about in the car to yourself, or how you interact with people around you. I'm always right. Everybody's always wrong. Everything today sucks. This was better back when I did it. It's just a natural progression that happens
of
to
aging.
your thinking. And when you get into your 80s, those thoughts harden into what we see right now.
And what
with
did
the
you
two
agree?
people running for president?
As you age, and you especially as you get up there, you're less willing to take advice. You become more stubborn.
You don't listen to shit. Nobody.
And that doesn't bode well if you are leading the free world and you rely on people around you, a team of rivals, to get the best information, make the best policy decisions. You don't want someone who's 80 who's just going to go with what they think.
I've always touted that what you really get when you get a president is you get about 3,500 federal jobs filled. And the president doesn't okay each one of them, but the overall theme of who the president is and what the presidency is reflected in how they staff the government. With that said, The next person that tells me it's okay for Biden because he has a great team, they get blocked, kicked off, never watching them again. That is not the point.
And I agree. And another intriguing thing that Biden said was that he believes he's the only one who can defeat Trump. That, in my mind, recalled Trump saying, "I alone can fix it."
That's
Again,
right.
Another similarity.
Similarity in language is starting to develop between both of them. How about when he said it was God that would tell him?
God Almighty was the only one.
If I'm Joe Scarborough, I just said, thank you. We're going to wrap this up because we're not helping you and you're not helping yourself. If our goal was to give you a friendly and to help you get back on pace, this is not doing it.
That alone
at all.
shows that he's out of touch with reality and won't listen to anybody.
He can't do it. So is there what's the next 2 weeks look like, Brandon? Does he stay? Does he go? I'm looking for anything to point to say if we see this is a sign of things churning.
The only positive is his team tried to wrap this all up, and there was a really off-putting statement that I think his communications advisor put out saying, "We've closed the chapter on the debate. We're not talking about the debate anymore," as if like the debate is a singular event and that's all. But despite all that, like the talk hasn't receded. There's still been a trickling of unease. More donors are coming forward publicly. There's still a trickling of members of Congress who are going on the record saying things like. That does not appear to be lessening. And so, despite none of the appearances, nothing he's done has reduced that. So I think the key determinant will be whether or not that grows at scale at a rate to where it has an impact. If you get congressional leaders on the record, if you get somebody like a former president to come out and say something, that's going to have an impact. And to see all of the big dollar donors dry up their fundraising, like to see a complete blackout on donations to the campaign. Something of like that would send a message to where the Biden team would have to respond and decide, like, I can't be in this any longer.
So by July 15th, I think is when this Lester Holt thing is.
So 5 days from now. Yeah.
5-ish days. God, it's July.
Today's the 10th.
Jesus.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. So by the time we get... If by the time we get to the Lester Holt interview, more major donors have piled off, more governors, senators, and elected officials, we're moving towards the direction of people coalescing around the idea of him leaving, and donors have dried up, that would be the next reflection point for him to say, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. It's time
Correct.
to get out.
I think all of those, and I would even go more specific and explicit. If you start having governors of some of those must-win swing states step forward and say, Joe Biden can't win my state, then I think that's over.
Whitmer denied it, but Politico reported she called the White House and said, yeah, you could write off Michigan. Yeah. Michigan's dead. If she would say that publicly, along with it, is it Ewers in Wisconsin and Shapiro in Pennsylvania?
Right.
Campaign's over. Because if he loses one of those three, he's not winning the presidency. He's not going to win those.
Arizona, with Democratic governor there too, let's not forget.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, he's down 5 in Arizona, 5 in Nevada, 7 in Pennsylvania, 5 in Michigan. It's just not.
And, with a different Democrat, there would have been an opportunity to pick up a state like North Carolina that Trump only won by like a point. But that's not even in the realm of possibility right now.
And in my ultimate fantasy, in 2022, when he resigns, he basically says, hey, Kamala is this is going to be a little bit of an audition for her, but we're not just backing her. She's in the mix. She even has my endorsement. She's got the money I raised, but at the end of the day, we're going to open this up and see what happens. And then he could have looked at the camera and said, and if Kamala Harris wants to be president, then she can handle a primary. Can't she? Is that too hard? No, it's not.
So this all goes back. I think many of us who are day-to-day in politics, like you and myself, and follow this, we like to think that our politics is more along the lines of like West Wing or Designated Survivor, those television shows.
High-end prestige shows with intelligent, beautiful people doing fun and interesting things.
But also very strategic, a lot of machinations behind the scenes.
A lot of thinking going on.
And then we find out, like, no, that's not the case. Like, there's no leadership. Nobody steps up. Everything's just in disarray. So our politics is more akin to, like, the TV show Veep, for anybody who's seen that, where it's ridiculous, bumbling, inept.
It's just people who found themselves in a situation they never thought they would be in and have no idea how to perform the roles they're in, is what Veep is. That really sounds like a lot of that's what we're dealing with.
And nobody
with
wants
the
to be the
Biden
first
folks.
to come out against their leader, and so everybody stays quiet. So we're seeing with Democrats right now, to a large extent, not everybody, but a large extent, what we saw with Republicans with Trump. Everybody's afraid. Nobody wants to risk their political capital, even though the future of democracy is at stake.
If you and I were co-chairs of the Donald Trump campaign, we're high-fiving, we're spending campaign money, because, we are rolling downhill with the wind at our back, right?
Yeah.
All we got to do is keep this fatty from stepping on his dick one time till November, and we probably have this.
And you know what's so ironic is that the backgrounds pre-debate scuttle with Trump's team, they were worried about the debate. They actually they had a lot to lose going into it. A lot was at risk. They were worried about him performing, and then all of that went by the wayside because of Biden and what he did. And it's just, and I go back to the fact that the irony of all ironies of this is it was Biden that called for that early debate. This was supposed to be his moment to shine, and then
he was down. And I think a lot of people knew if he doesn't, if he can't do it here, it's really a moot point because it really doesn't matter.
That was make or break for him.
Can't make up ground.
No.
Every day that Biden doesn't drop out of the race is just another day Trump gets to play golf, throw out some zingers, and just have fun. Because he doesn't have to campaign. And what that debate really did, and you kind of hit upon this, it just showed you how beatable Trump is. And it showed you, too, that a guy can basically be a corpse on stage, can't finish a sentence, can't put a thought together, and his polling doesn't collapse against this guy.
Yeah.
That's what I think is fueling all of this. If we just swapped him out,
Trump was terrible.
Things would be great again. I don't believe that, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, and you cannot say enough Trump was terrible. He had word salad. He got worse as the debate went on, and he regurgitated talking points. He deflected multiple times and not answer questions. It would, by any stretch of imagination, if you had any normal candidate against him, Trump would have lost that debate.
But anytime we say that, we have to end that sentence with, and he performed exactly as his base expected him.
Right.
He could do all of that. He suffered no penalty. Trump could have given the exact same performance as Biden. None of his team would have said a word.
Yeah.
Other than, that was fantastic. We're moving on. Political reality is going to set in at some point. It's either going to set in time to get Biden off or it's not. And I have no feeling for what's going to happen.
Can you imagine if midway through the Biden presidency a change had been made or announcement that he was going to run?
I keep saying this, 2022.
We would be in a situation
where
we
would be dominating.
Democrats could be in the reverse, arguing the age issue against Trump, and the Republicans saying, "Look at his, inability to be coherent and on the stump and in these campaign rallies. He's 78. That's too old."
Don't have to be Aaron Sorkin to think this shit up. It was the easiest thing to come up with. The guy even said it during his own campaign. I'm a one-termer because I'm old and I can't do this. I just don't.
He was supposed to make way for the next generation of leadership.
Somehow,
he said that
all of that
times.
got sidetracked, and here we sit. Let's make ourselves. Let's take on a different topic for a second. I want to talk about the Supreme Court and what they did to the presidency last week. Because I think.
It was such a heavy week last week.
Because I listened to like 5 podcasts and couldn't really make sense of what's happening. I think what clearly and succinctly and mostly accurately describes it as the president was told, hey, while you're president, really you can't be touched. But once you are not president, if you did illegal activity during your presidency, regardless if it's a constitutionally defined, whatever it is, if it's illegal, once you're out of the president, we can go at you like any normal citizen. That's always been the rule until last Thursday, where I think the change was, or one of the changes was, whatever you do, if it's a core competency constitutionally defined of your presidency, you are immune while you're president, and you are immune after you're president.
Correct. But therein lies the problem, because what is deemed official action versus unofficial, and then there's a third bucket where it's more of a gray area. It's ambiguous.
Sure.
Is it official? Is it not official? It's kind of in between. And basically, the court punted and said, that would have to be addressed by the lower courts.
But they did say, just presume he has immunity for all of it, right? He has presumptive. The court basically said not only is he immune from things that are official duties, these unofficial duties for the purpose of prosecuting the president, you can assume he has presumptive immunity in everything.
Such as the Stormy Daniels
That's
payment,
correct.
doing that while he was
That's
president,
correct.
even though that's not related to the
That's
office
correct.
at all.
Oh, and by the way, if he did something horrible that was a crime, but as an official act as the president, you can't use any of that against him to investigate or to charge him with a crime that is not an official.
Which
duty.
that's crazy. That actually was the one area where Amy Coney Barrett broke with the conservatives and said that was a bridge too far.
So to me, what the court did is they did a couple things. Number one, they just let it be known to all of the other lower courts, when it comes to the president, we will handle this. You can do whatever you want. I don't give a shit. But we're going to wipe it all out. And the presidency, any legal action with the presidency after last Thursday's reading flows through the Supreme Court.
Right.
So you might as well not even get that excited downstream, because we're basically going to decide what goes and what doesn't go with the president. The second thing they did is, hey, if you think you can try somebody who is the ex-president, who is also the leader of the party during a presidential year, no, you can't do that. We control the timeline. To me, that was the Supreme Court stepping in, telling the lower courts how disappointed they were that these things moved forward at the pace they were moving on, and then said, oh, by the way, moving forward, for everybody below the 9, just assume he's got immunity on everything. We'll handle it.
Yep. And this is president setting. I mean, basically saying that the president has, as you said, presumptive immunity for all official and unofficial actions. It deviates from originalism, and which is supposed to be the philosophy most of these justices adhere to. And it heavily complicates this, because if they had any intention of reducing the chaos of this decision, they would have defined official conduct, unofficial, and they didn't, which means every one of these decisions will have to go through multiple courts, come back up to them, and it'll be subjective at their whim what counts as official or unofficial.
Telling the lower courts you shouldn't have done it in the first place. We are taking all of it. We will decide every piece of this. This is the president of the United States. What do you think you were doing? And in some ways, I have to agree with the court on that. If we're going to start going after ex-presidents and nominees of parties, the Supreme Court has to lay the rules down for that. They have to. There's too much danger in the state courts on state by state, prosecutor by prosecutor for misconduct. It has to flow through the Supreme Court.
They did not. I do just, and maybe you don't disagree on this, but I think one facet of this decision is it did not have to be as broad-reaching. It didn't have to be a decision for the ages, as Gorsuch said. It could have been narrowly tailored specifically to Trump's conduct in this specific instance, and instead they chose to write this overarching decision, which added much more ambiguity. And I think they should have just remanded back to the appeals court, or not remanded, but allowed the appeals court decision to stand. That would have been the easiest, and not say we're going to then create this blanket argument for immunity.
So they wanted to do all that.
They did, but this also flies in the face of the case against Nixon and all of the prior Supreme Court precedents that actually reduced executive power and whittled away at that, and now they're going in the opposite direction. It makes me think that if we had this court back when we had the Nixon case and some of the others, we would have had drastically different decisions on those cases.
I think so, and I think too, what is the role of precedent anymore with this court? Because they just took a hatchet to that thing. I thought to your point, incremental change, slow. If we're going to do something big,
nope, that's not
what we did.
Case after case, they've gone after precedent. I mean, most obvious being the Dobbs decision. So,
well, and they just happened to form a decision that imminently helps Trump and brings the issue to them moving forward. I think that's obviously what the court set out.
But it also opens them up to a lot of criticism, because what is to stop, if there was a decision now involving conduct involving Biden, would they be so quick to say, oh, that counts as core official conduct? Or would they be like, oh, no, that's unofficial. Like, we're going to...
What I'd love if Justice Roberts came out and said, hey, listen, I get it. Everyone's pissed about that ruling. AOC filed impeachment papers on Clarence Thomas and Justice Alito today. That's great. Knock yourself out. You got to get it out. I get it. I understand all of that. We'll take all of that heat. You know who really caused this problem? I'm looking right at them. All the voters, all the party people, all you people out there. We didn't tell you to put these people up for the presidency. Yeah. You guys did that. You guys did that. You took everything you knew about who to vote for a president, and you put it on hold, and you put that guy up there. That's not on us. This is dealing with the consequences of the Trump presidency. And unfortunately, Joe Biden now is going to cause some of the same kind of problems. But yeah, if I'm the court, don't get pissed off at us. You people did this. We didn't elect this guy. You guys did. You're the one that decided to put a lawless criminal basically in the White House. We didn't do that. We watched the TV show just like you guys did. We didn't fall for it. We didn't think that. It's maddening that you pull. It's maddening to me. And this has to get back. This has to start with party reform. The only people that can keep people like Biden and Trump out of the presidency, the only way to do it is for the party to deny them the opportunity to run in the first place. And I would love if the Democrat and Republican parties could get together and say, as parties, we've been hijacked. We're going to set some common rules to help us maybe get back to where the only way to avoid this is not to let it happen in the first place.
Yeah.
And the only place that happens is at the party level.
Way back in 2008, I had penned an op-ed in the Kansas City Star arguing why the two-party system was so great and why it produced stability in this country. We didn't see instability you saw in other multi-party democracies. I have completely gone 180 on that line of thinking. I would tear up that op-ed today and rewrite it based on what I know now. And I would strongly argue we would be better served being a multi-party democracy where you had to form coalition governments, and that way the leader that you would elect would have to be a consensus candidate, and you would have to make sure you had enough parties on board to be able to pass legislation. It would change the game in terms of what we saw with policy, with candidates, the way we conduct our elections. And I just look at, if you look at recent elections overseas, so there was a British election recently where Labour won resoundingly. Both parties accepted the results. There was no election denialism. It wasn't like an existential crisis.
Results in like the next day, everything good.
France was a little bit more turbulent because you had the far right, the National Rally, which is very populist Trumpian, which was trying to gain power. But even then, there was tactical strategic voting. So Emmanuel Macron's party, which is, I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's a centrist party, as well as the far left party, they came together and said, okay, we're going to go district by district, and we're going to choose the candidate who has the best chance of win. So here it'll be the left candidate, the centrist candidate will bow out. Here it's going to be the centrist candidate, we won't have someone from the left. So that way it's a one-on-one race. And guess what? The results were that the leftist parties came out on top, followed by Macron, and the far right came out third, against what was assumed to be the case with the polling. We saw that in the Polish election last fall, where there was this broad effort against the populist Law and Justice Party, where everyone from center right to far left came together as a coalition and said, we are going to run together and we're going to stop this threat. And they did it. And we are unable to do that here because our structure is so vastly different. And it's infuriating to me because you see tactical strategy at play to keep extremists out of office in other countries, and it's done successfully, but we're not able to do that here.
I love watching British political commentary. It's fast. I love it when two people are just verbally shivving each other, but they're doing it using such politeness and such proper English that you don't realize, these two are murdering each other.
Like
they're
knives
just
out.
destroying each other.
I also like that the media over in the UK is much more hard-hitting against their political leaders. We have this just imbued sense of deference with our media, where they don't want to keep poking a politician. If they don't answer the question, they'll relent. When over there, they will just go full board, and they are relentless in terms of getting a politician to give a direct answer. And our media doesn't do that. And so I think that we are unfortunately not well served in many cases because the electorate doesn't get full answers like we deserve because we have a media that's unwilling to go as far as they need to.
What was most interesting about the British election to me is Nigel Farage. And I just cannot believe the British people have let that little bastard worm his way back into politics.
Yeah.
How hard? I mean, can you just look at the guy and say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're that Brexit fellow, right? Oh, well, why are you here? You can just go."
So just a little bit of an explainer. British politics is very different than our politics in that, well, number one, they don't have a decentralized, evolved system like we do. So, we are basically, a republic form of government, decentralized with state and local, county configuration. They don't really have that in the UK. They have cities, and that's it. Like, they don't have states, anything similar to states or provinces. There's no devolution. And when many of these candidates run for members of parliament and federal office in the UK, they will easily just go and shop for a district where they can win. Like, there isn't issues with residency. People can just up and move and not be an issue because it really doesn't matter over there like it does here.
So he found where Brexit was popular, basically, and moved into the
like
district.
The one district where it's popular.
Term.
If I can, it's specifically a southeast England seaside town that's heavily socially conservative, and he picked the district where they had the largest percentage for Brexit, ran there, split the vote with the Conservative, knew he would be able to get enough to come out ahead, and that's how he won. So
that's amazing.
Because if you look at his performance, I mean, his new party only gained 4 total seats in the parliament of 650. So they did extremely bad, but he specifically district shopped to find a district where he could win, and that's how it went.
I mean, the balls on that guy. I mean, watching people during the British election basically just say, we're a second-class country now in Europe. Europe's left us behind.
Yeah.
From cost of living to lifestyle.
Oh, completely.
We are on the decline. And you know who did it? Right there. That's the guy.
Brexit.
And he's right. It's not just us. It's not just us. And the guy, he can put 4 sentences together and he can deliver a political speech. I will give that to him. But are we so naive and just so stupid and so shallow that we don't see that guy for the biggest grifter in political history?
Oh, he completely is. But
whatever. Back in politics.
Another facet about the British election that's different than us is they're not as heavily polarized to where you don't see wild swings, because Labour won an incredible majority. It's the largest majority in more than, I want to say 100 years. The Tories suffered their worst political defeat of all time.
They lost things they'd held since 1850 and shit like that.
I mean, you're talking about a 150 seat difference. We would never see that in our government because part of that too is our districts are drawn by the parties, which is another problem we have to solve for. That should not happen. We should have redistricting commissions. And so we don't see that here. But in Britain, their electorate can still respond when they're unhappy with the governments and send strong messages where we can. And that's what happened in the UK election. It was pretty astounding.
I like what happened in France, but now you have to form a government. And there's nobody really won a majority there, are they? There's no... How is that government going to come together? It's
going to have to be a coalition government with the left and the center. And the greatest challenge is they're going to have to decide, who will be PM. As president, Emmanuel Macron will serve until 2026, but there will be a prime minister installed. And they have to come to agreement on that. There'll have to be some quid pro quo done in terms of, okay, if you vote for our guy for PM, we're going to help with this legislation. So yeah, it gets messy, but it's possible. I mean, most of the European countries are multi-party democracies, and the Netherlands, they recently went through a similar thing where they had to form a coalition government. Spain had to do so. I mean, most of the countries have been through it. I still argue that the outcomes are better than what we are getting in our country right now, because at the end of the day, they're able to defeat extremists, and it may be messy because they have to come together and then kind of work out compromises, but they're also much more used to compromise because of that. They don't have government shutdowns. They don't have stalemates over budgets like we do, because that's part of their just institutional framework of how their governments operate. They know they need to build consensus and cooperate, and we don't have that institutionalized anymore.
I don't get the impression there's anybody in the British government that says, I'm just going to sit here for 50 years, entrench myself in here, and just be disruptive to the entire process. No. That person would get booted out very quickly, it sounds like.
Completely. And guess what? There are people, when they lose elections, like the senior Tory party leader stepped down. Romney McDaniel, she has stepped down after the 2022 losses or the 2020 loss.
That PM of theirs, Renee, I can't say Renee. Say his name for me, please. The old PM, the Indian gentleman.
Oh, Rishi Sunak.
Yes. I mean, as soon as he lost that election, it just looked like 50 pounds came off that guy.
Yeah.
He talked better. He was more articulate. You could tell he wasn't trying to measure every word coming out of his mouth. I think that, well, let's end with this. Reform feels like it's in the air. It feels like for American politics, the American people would be really up for some type of reform to how let's just stick with electing a president. Are there any small, easy changes that the parties, the FEC, anybody involved in it could make that you think these would be easy to do? They would be somewhat accepted by a broad base of folks, so you're not going to piss off half the country by doing this, that could actually change anything. Is there anything we could do that would just say, this isn't much, but at least it would be better?
Yeah, I think on the local level, there's a lot you can do. For example, you can start looking at statutes on the local level and implementing them. I give an example that the county I live in, Johnson County, on the very hyper-local level for county commission races, those are nonpartisan, and they basically have a system where everybody runs together in a primary and the top two vote getters advance to the general. You could then take that and broaden that statute out to include state legislature and then work your way up from there. And if you start with state legislature, it gives you a bench of consensus candidates who can then run for higher office, who are more likely to be amenable to compromise and to working with the other side, and then eventually write that up to the state and federal levels. Change the way that you have primaries in this country. Like, I would work out a structure where you immediately get rid of caucuses completely, because the caucuses are anti-democratic, small number of people participate, and they're highly exclusionary, and it's the zealots that choose the candidates. So start from there, get rid of that. Look at ranked choice voting. Not every state is going to be amenable to ranked choice voting. So alternatives you would have is, blanket nonpartisan primaries. Like, there's other alternatives that are going to be more workable at the state level that are going to still likely produce different outcomes. So you look at ideas like that, and that's how you can immediately get started to, get wheels moving. But any kind of effort needs to be localized. You need to have different chapters working at a state level, state by state, to do that.
I would go up a level to the national level at the Dem party, and I would focus on primaries, but I would just eliminate the primary system. We didn't have primaries back in the day.
And the order of the states with Iowa, New Hampshire.
Yeah, just say the party's going to pick candidates, and that's just how it's going to be. To do that, though, we have to get
That's what happens in the UK. Parties pick the candidates.
We got to figure out a way to get money back through the party, so the party has the leverage over folks to say, you run, you don't run. And the way we control that is through the dollars. I mean, right now, the small fundraising stuff that anybody can do cuts the party out of any type of position to be able to enforce party rules or cohesion on it. So I would start with, hey, as the Democrats, we're done doing the parties won't be elections anymore. It'll be a party process, and we're going to try everything we can to make money flow through us, not individual fundraisers. Because we've got to have, I know everybody hates central control, and I get that, but we got to have some entity that delivers some sort of consistency across the candidates, the election, and presents kind of a unified front to the base and to the electorate that we're going after. Yeah. And we just can't keep doing that if 2/3 of the people in Congress just want to start a podcast, are just there to build a brand. I mean, we could list off 50 people right now. The president, I mean, we've already seen how quickly that can get off the rails with populism and with somebody that catches fire. I just think for right now, if I could do one thing, how could the Democrat Party just exert more control at the party level? Because it just seems it's getting away from us everywhere else.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, that would be healthy for both parties, frankly.
Now, you do anything fun this weekend, Brandon?
I don't know yet. I have nothing planned. We'll see.
So my wife is getting ready to bust out like a month's worth of business travel. She's going to be gone like the entire last half of July and into August. So I'm kind of prepping up for. Okay.
I was thinking the other day, it's good that you guys went to Vegas when you did because it was like 120 there the other day.
Brandon, it was 115.
Oh, was it when you were there?
You walked outside and you literally felt your organs starting to liquefy. It was so hot.
I mean, there are record temperatures across much of like the Southwest and Western U.S. right now. Portland, Oregon, they said like recorded their highest temperature
That's
ever.
Crazy. Because we went to Oregon a month before we went to Vegas, and it was 75, 60, beautiful, rained a lot. But yeah, Vegas, if this is global warming, there's just places in the West that humans are just going to have to move out of.
Well, and now if you've read, like air travel is kind of becoming an issue too because planes can't fly when it's that hot because, you know, the air is less dense.
Yeah.
And so then they have to remove weight from the plane. So the planes fly at, you know, 70, 60% capacity instead of 100%. So then people are dislodged from planes. They have to get on different flights. It's an airport hassle. Like it's a huge ordeal.
What'll kick a lot of people out of the West, Phoenix, Vegas, places like that, is just a lack of water.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, you're trucking water in from California. I heard in Phoenix they're having to drill wells up to 2,500 feet to hit groundwater. So a lack of water is really going to be the planner for those cities.
Well, and Phoenix is particularly cracking down. I was reading a story saying that there are developers that were just like putting up all these new housing projects, but with no water source originally.
Everyone's on well water.
And the city said, well, you didn't get your permits approved by us and get a water source established, so they're being cut off. And so, they have to go with just well water or keep their own tanks and refill them, which is crazy.
Or if you live somewhere and you just decide to dig a well, is that okay?
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of rules or regulation come to that too. So
right.
I don't know. The guy that did the movie The Big Short, the guy who shorted the housing market.
Oh, yeah.
His next the only investment he made after that was water rights. Buying land and water rights, as he's guessing water is going to be valuable moving forward. That's probably
smart.
Right.
I think he's right. Yeah.
That's our hour. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks for listening to 2 Men in the Middle. Make sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our website at 2meninthemiddle.com. Drop us an email at 2meninthemiddle@gmail.com or tweet at us at 2 Men in the Middle. We'll see you next week.